I never planned on becoming my husband's employer, but then again, he never planned on me discovering the offshore account where he'd hidden our life savings. The same account funding his girlfriend's luxury condo in Palm Beach. Life has a way of surprising us both. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The Denver skyline glittered outside my corner office as I signed the final acquisition paperwork. In 12 hours, Andrew would arrive at work to discover his new boss was the same woman he'd been stealing from for nearly a year. The same woman whose financial acumen he'd always underestimated with that condescending smile. "You're overthinking it, Olivia," he'd say whenever I questioned an investment. "This is why you should stick to your marketing strategies and let me handle our finances." I traced my fingers over the embossed company letterhead of Thompson Financial Advisors, now officially a subsidiary of Hawthorne Capital Partners. My company. It had taken 6 months of meticulous planning, leveraging connections he never knew I had, and resources he never suspected I possessed. Andrew had spent our life savings on his mistress, never imagining he'd end up working for me. The morning started like any other Tuesday in April. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of our Cherry Creek home, illuminating the granite countertops Andrew had insisted we upgrade last year, despite the exorbitant cost. "We deserve the best, Liv," he'd said, his arm around my waist as the contractor showed us samples. "We've worked hard to get here. We had worked hard. 15 years of marriage, building our lives in Denver with the singular focus of creating financial security neither of us had growing up. Andrew, with his finance degree from Penn State, had climbed the ranks at Thompson Financial Advisors, while I'd built my own career in corporate strategy at Hawthorne Capital Partners. I poured my coffee and scrolled through emails on my tablet. 3 messages from Lisa, my executive assistant, about the quarterly strategy meeting. 1 from my mother asking about our summer plans. And a notification from our joint credit card, a charge for $4,500 at Cartier in Miami. Miami? Andrew was supposed to be at a financial advisors conference in Chicago. I frowned, checking the date. Yesterday at 2:38 p.m., I texted Andrew, "How's the conference going?" His response came quickly. Boring as expected. Heading into another session on tax strategies. "Miss you." I stared at his text, a strange sensation settling in my stomach. I checked. The credit card notification again. It wasn't an error. "Focus on the facts," I whispered to myself. A mantra I'd developed over years of handling corporate acquisitions. Emotions clouded judgment. Facts created clarity. Fact: a substantial charge at Cartier in Miami while Andrew claimed to be in Chicago. I set my coffee down and pulled up our account dashboard on my tablet. There were several recent transactions I didn't recognize. A recurring charge to something called Azure Properties for $8,200 monthly. 3 payments to Delta Airlines for flights between Denver and Miami. A $12,000 charge to a high-end furniture store in Palm Beach. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected Andrew of being unfaithful. We had what I considered a strong partnership, perhaps not burning with passion after all these years, but built on mutual respect and shared goals. We were saving for early retirement, planning to buy a vacation home in 2 years when we turned 45. I closed the banking app and opened my calendar. My meeting at Hawthorne wasn't for another 2 hours. I had time. First, I called the credit card company, posing a simple question. Was there a mistake with the Miami charge? The representative confirmed it was processed in person, chip and PIN used. Next, I called the hotel in Chicago where the financial conference was being held. "I'm trying to leave an urgent message for my husband, Andrew Reynolds. He's attending the National Financial Advisors Conference," I explained. "One moment, let me check our guest list," the receptionist replied, after a brief pause. "I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone registered under that name." He's definitely there, I insisted. The conference started yesterday and runs through Thursday. Ma'am, we are hosting that conference, but there's no Andrew Reynolds registered either with the hotel or the conference itself. Perhaps he's staying elsewhere? I thanked her and ended the call, my hands perfectly steady despite the tremor I felt inside. I reached for my coffee, now cold, and took a sip. Andrew and I had separate careers but shared everything else. Our finances were transparent, or so I believed. We consulted each other on major purchases. We had quarterly financial summits where we reviewed our investment portfolio, updated our 5-year plan, and adjusted our budget. It was Andrew who insisted on this structure. No financial secrets between us, he'd say. That's how marriages get into trouble. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened my laptop and logged into our investment accounts. Everything appeared normal at first glance. Our retirement accounts, stock portfolio, real estate investments. But something nagged at me. The total balance seemed lower than I remembered from our last quarterly review. I pulled up the spreadsheet Andrew had prepared 3 months ago. According to his summary, our total investments should be approximately $185 million. The current balance showed just under $950,000, nearly half of our life savings was gone. My heart pounded as I dug deeper, pulling up transaction histories and transfer records. Over the past 8 months, Andrew had been systematically moving funds from our joint investment accounts to an external bank I didn't recognize, Atlantic Shore Banking, with an account number that wasn't connected to any of our established accounts. I grabbed my phone and called Marcus Bennett, my closest friend since business school and now the chief legal officer at Hawthorne Capital. I need a favor, I said when he answered. A personal one, completely confidential. You sound serious, Liv. Everything okay? I'm not sure. Can you help me track down information about a bank? Atlantic Shore Banking. I need to know where they're based, their regulatory status, and if possible, details about a specific account. That's not a small ask, Marcus replied carefully. Is this related to a Hawthorne matter? No. It's personal. I can't explain everything right now, but I think Andrew has been moving our savings into an account I don't have access to. The silence on the other end stretched for a moment. Come to my office. This isn't a conversation for the phone. An hour later, I sat across from Marcus in his corner office at Hawthorne Capital's headquarters, the Denver skyline creating a dramatic backdrop to our conversation. I'd laid out everything I'd discovered, the credit card charges, the missing conference, the transferred investments. Marcus leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Atlantic Shore Banking is a private offshore bank based in the Cayman Islands. They specialize in high-net-worth clients who value discretion. Offshore, I repeated. Andrew had always been conservative with our investments, favoring established domestic institutions. That doesn't sound like Andrew. People surprise us, Marcus said simply, especially when they're hiding something. Can you find out anything about the specific account? Marcus hesitated. Legally speaking, I shouldn't, but I have contacts. He studied me for a moment. Liv, are you prepared for what you might find? Because once you start pulling this thread, I need to know, I said firmly. If Andrew is hiding our money offshore while lying about his whereabouts, I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Okay. Marcus nodded. Give me a day or two. In the meantime, don't confront him. Don't change your routine. If he's hiding something significant, tipping your hand could make things more complicated. I agreed and stood to leave, my mind already racing with contingency plans. Olivia, Marcus called as I reached the door. Whatever's happening, remember you have allies. Don't try to handle everything alone. I managed a small smile. I won't. And Marcus, thank you. Back at my desk, I stared at my computer screen without seeing it. The quarterly strategy meeting would start in 20 minutes, but strategy was the furthest thing from my mind. My thoughts kept returning to the missing money, the Miami charges, the lies about Chicago. Lisa knocked gently on my door. The board members are gathering in the conference room. Do you need anything before we start? I straightened in my chair. Actually, yes. Can you pull everything we have on Thompson Financial Advisors? They were on our potential acquisition list last year, but we tabled it. Lisa looked surprised. The mid-size advisory firm on Cherry Creek? I thought we decided they were too small to bother with. I'm reconsidering. Please have the files ready after the board meeting. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Of course, she replied. Any particular aspect you're interested in? Everything, I said. Financial position, client list, organizational structure. And Lisa? This is confidential for now. After she left, I took a deep breath and centered myself. The board meeting needed my full attention, regardless of my personal crisis. I could compartmentalize. It was one of my strengths. The ability to focus on the task at hand while processing complex problems in the background. The meeting proceeded as expected. Quarterly results, strategic initiatives, competitive analysis. I delivered my portion with practiced precision, giving no indication that my personal life was imploding. CEO Catherine Blackwell gave me an approving nod as I concluded my presentation on potential acquisition targets. Excellent work as always, Olivia, she said. Your ability to identify undervalued assets continues to impress the board. If only she knew how personally relevant that skill had suddenly become. When I returned to my office, Lisa had assembled a comprehensive file on Thompson Financial Advisors. Founded 30 years ago, the firm managed approximately $800 million in assets across a predominantly wealthy client base. Their performance was solid if unspectacular. Andrew had been with them for 11 years, working his way up to senior advisor with a client portfolio worth approximately $150 million. What caught my attention, however, was buried in their corporate structure. The founder, Jeffrey Thompson, had been gradually reducing his ownership stake as part of his retirement strategy. The firm was now 51% owned by a holding company called Evergreen Partners, with the remaining 49% distributed among senior partners, including a 7% stake held by Andrew. Lisa, I called, what do we know about Evergreen Partners? She appeared in my doorway. Not much in our files. They're a private investment group that acquired controlling interest in Thompson about 2 years ago. Would you like me to dig deeper? Please. Find out who owns Evergreen Partners. As Lisa left, my phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. Flight delayed. Might not get home until after midnight. Don't wait up. I stared at the message, wondering where he actually was and who he was with. The Andrew I thought I knew, practical, methodical, risk-averse, seemed increasingly like a stranger. By late afternoon, Marcus called. I have information, he said without preamble. My contact at Atlantic Shore confirms the account exists and was opened 9 months ago. The primary signatory is Andrew Reynolds. And the balance? I asked, bracing myself. Current balance is just over $920,000. I closed my eyes. Nearly $1 million. Our money. Sitting in an offshore account I hadn't known existed. There's more, Marcus continued. There's a secondary address associated with the account, a property in Palm Beach, and regular transfers to someone named Vanessa Carson. Who is Vanessa Carson? I'm sending you what I found, Marcus replied. But Liv, she's a 29-year-old real estate agent in Miami, very active on social media. My computer pinged with Marcus's email. I opened it to find several social media screenshots. A beautiful young woman with cascading blonde hair and a dazzling smile. In one photo, she stood in front of a luxury condo building, gesturing professionally in a tailored suit. In another, she lounged on a yacht in a bikini, sunglasses perched on her nose and champagne flute in hand. I scrolled through the images, with clinical detachment until I reached one that made my breath catch. Vanessa standing close to a man, his arm wrapped around her waist, both of them laughing at something off camera. The man's face was partially turned away, but I would recognize my husband's profile anywhere. The photo was tagged, "Dainchiu Weekend Getaway. Love my life." "I'll call you back," I told Marcus, and ended the call. Minutes later, Lisa knocked on my door again. "I found information on Evergreen Partners," she said, handing me a folder. "It's a subsidiary of Hawthorne Capital." I stared at her. "What?" "Specifically, it's part of our private equity division's portfolio. We acquired majority ownership of Thompson Financial 2 years ago through Evergreen. It's one of our quiet holdings. We maintain the original branding and management structure while implementing our growth strategies behind the scenes." I opened the folder with suddenly unsteady hands. There it was, in black and white. Thompson Financial Advisors was already owned by Hawthorne Capital, my company. Andrew worked for a subsidiary of the firm where I served as Chief Strategy Officer, and he had no idea. The information hit me with stunning clarity. For years, Andrew had dismissed my career as less significant than his own. "I manage real money, Liv," he'd say. "Millions of dollars in investments. You just push paper and make presentations." He'd never bothered to understand what my role at Hawthorne actually entailed, or the scale of operations I helped direct. Now he was stealing our savings to fund a relationship with a younger woman, all while technically being my employee. As reality sank in, a strange calm settled over me. This wasn't just about infidelity or stolen money. This was about years of condescension, of having my intelligence and capabilities subtly undermined by the man who was supposed to be my partner. I picked up my phone and called Catherine Blackwell's direct line. "Catherine, it's Olivia. I need to discuss something important regarding Thompson Financial Advisors. Are you available for dinner tonight?" "Thompson? I thought we backburnered that acquisition." "We did," I replied, "but I believe it's time for more hands-on management approach." I ended the call and looked out at the Denver skyline, watching as office lights began to illuminate against the darkening sky. Andrew thought he was so clever, hiding money offshore, building a secret life with his mistress in Miami. He had no idea what was coming. For the first time since discovering the Cartier charge that morning, I smiled. Andrew had spent our life savings on his mistress. He was about to discover exactly who he'd been underestimating all these years. The upscale, Italian restaurant Catherine had chosen for our dinner meeting buzzed with the quiet energy of Denver's business elite. We were seated in a private alcove near the back, afforded both discretion and a view of the entire dining room. "I've ordered the Barolo," Catherine said as I slid into my seat. At 56, Hawthorne Capital's CEO radiated the confidence of someone who had spent decades making decisions that shaped companies and careers. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, her navy suit impeccably tailored. "Now tell me why we're suddenly interested in Thompson Financial again." I took a measured breath. "I need to disclose a personal conflict of interest first. My husband, Andrew Reynolds, is a senior advisor at Thompson." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly. "I wasn't aware of that connection. It's never been relevant to my work at Hawthorne. We've maintained professional separation." The sommelier arrived with the wine, giving me a moment to gather my thoughts as Catherine went through the ritual of tasting and approving it. When we were alone again, I continued. "This morning, I discovered Andrew has been systematically transferring our personal savings, nearly $1 million, to an offshore account I had no knowledge of." Catherine's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened with interest. "Go on." "The money appears to be funding a lifestyle in Miami with a woman named Vanessa Carson. He's been lying about business trips, using our joint funds to maintain what looks like a second relationship." "I'm sorry, Olivia. That's a difficult discovery." Catherine took a sip of her wine. but I'm not clear on how this relates to Hawthorne's interest in Thompson Financial. Because when I started investigating today, I discovered something I didn't know before, that Thompson is already majority owned by Hawthorne through Evergreen Partners. A slight smile played at the corner of Catherine's mouth. Yes. One of several quiet acquisitions we made before you joined the executive team. We maintain the original branding and management structure while implementing growth strategies behind the scenes. Which means, I continued, Andrew effectively works for me, though he doesn't know it. Catherine studied me for a long moment. And now you're thinking about making that relationship more explicit. I nodded. I want to initiate a strategic restructuring of Thompson Financial, officially bringing it under Hawthorne's direct management rather than operating through Evergreen Partners. That's a significant shift from our current approach with Thompson, Catherine noted. Purely from a business perspective, what's the advantage? Thompson has solid fundamentals but lackluster growth. Their client acquisition rate has stagnated for 3 years, and their investment strategies are overly conservative. With direct oversight, we could modernize their approach, integrate their client base with our broader services, and increase revenue by at least 30% within 18 months. Catherine nodded slowly. A reasonable assessment. And the personal angle? I met her gaze directly. Andrew has been condescending about my career for years while systematically stealing our joint savings. Learning that he's actually been my employee all along provides an opportunity to correct both situations simultaneously. Catherine's laugh was brief but genuine. Poetic justice has its appeal. She swirled her wine thoughtfully. The board will need a business case focused solely on Thompson's potential under direct management. Can you prepare that by Friday? It's already in progress. Good. Now, she leaned forward slightly. Let's discuss your personal situation. Have you consulted with a divorce attorney? Not yet. I'm gathering evidence first. Smart. When you're ready, Richard Calloway at Preston and Winters is excellent. Handled my second divorce with remarkable efficiency. Catherine's expression softened slightly. This is undoubtedly painful, Olivia, but from what I've observed over the years, you possess a rare clarity under pressure. Don't lose that. I won't, I promised. As for the restructuring, I'll support your proposal to the board if the numbers make sense. Just be certain you can separate the professional execution from the personal satisfaction. Absolutely, I assured her, though privately I wondered if such separation was truly possible. The lines between my personal and professional lives had already been blurred without my knowledge. After dinner, I declined Catherine's offer of a ride home. Instead, I found myself driving toward Cherry Creek, not to my house, but to Thompson Financial's offices. The 6-story building was mostly dark at this hour, with only security lighting illuminating the lobby. I parked across the street and gazed up at the floor where Andrew's office was located. How many calls to Vanessa had he made from that office? How many times had he transferred our money while sitting at his desk? The thought should have sparked anger, but instead, I felt a curious detachment, as if I were analyzing a particularly complex business problem rather than the dissolution of my marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. Just landed in Denver, grabbing an Uber home. See you in the morning? I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled up the photos Marcus had sent me of Vanessa Carson and studied them more carefully. In one image, she stood in front of a luxury condo building I recognized as the Azure in Palm Beach, likely the source of those mysterious Azure Properties payments on our credit card. Another search revealed that units at the Azure started at $1.8 million. Had Andrew purchased a property there, or was he renting? Either way, the financial commitment was substantial, far more than the occasional hotel tryst would require. This wasn't just an affair. This was a parallel life being built with my money. I drove home, arriving shortly before midnight. I parked in the garage and silently entered through the mudroom, not wanting to wake Andrew if he was already asleep. The house was dark and quiet, with only the subtle glow of the security system panel providing illumination. I moved through the kitchen toward the stairs when a sound from Andrew's home office caught my attention. The soft click of a closing drawer. Pausing, I saw light spilling from beneath the door. He was awake, and in his office at midnight. I hesitated, then made a decision. Maintaining normalcy was crucial until I had my full strategy in place. I knocked gently on the office door. "Andrew?" "You're home. A moment of silence, then?" "Come in, Liv." I pushed open the door to find Andrew at his desk, his laptop open before him. He looked tired, his normally perfect appearance slightly rumpled from travel. Or what he wanted me to believe was travel. "How was Chicago?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe rather than entering fully. "Exhausting." The conference was back-to-back sessions. He ran a hand through his hair. "Sorry I'm home so late. The flight was delayed." "No problem. I had a late dinner with Catherine anyway." "Work stuff." Andrew nodded vaguely, clearly not interested in the details of my workday. "Anything exciting happen while I was gone?" The calm that had settled over me earlier remained intact. It was almost fascinating to watch him lie so effortlessly. "Nothing special," I replied. "Just the usual meetings. I'm heading to bed." "Coming. Up soon?" "In a bit. Need to send a few emails first." I nodded and started to turn away, then paused. "Oh, there was a notification from the credit card company. Something about unusual activity. Did you get that too?" The briefest flicker of tension crossed his face before his expression smoothed again. "Yeah, I saw that. Some mix-up with a conference expense. I already called them to sort it out." "Great," I said. "Good night, then." "Night, Liv." I closed the door and stood motionless in the hallway for a moment, listening. I heard the subtle sound of a drawer opening again, then closing. What was he hiding in there? Upstairs in our bedroom, I moved, through my nighttime routine mechanically, my mind racing with questions and plans. I needed more information about Andrew's financial maneuvers, about Vanessa, about the property in Palm Beach. Most importantly, I needed to understand exactly how deep the betrayal went. Sleep seemed impossible, but I made myself lie down, staring at the ceiling as I awaited Andrew's arrival. Nearly an hour passed before I heard his footsteps on the stairs. The bathroom light clicked on, and I heard the sounds of his nighttime routine. Brushing teeth, running water, the quiet thud of clothes going into the hamper. When he finally slipped into bed beside me, I kept my breathing deep and even, pretending to be asleep. He didn't reach for me, didn't whisper goodnight as he sometimes did when coming to bed late. Instead, he turned away immediately, maintaining the invisible barrier that had been growing between us for months. A barrier I had attributed to work stress or midlife malaise, never suspecting its true cause. Morning came too quickly. I rose at my usual 5:30 a.m., careful not to wake Andrew as I dressed for my morning run. This daily routine had been part of my life for years, 5 miles through the quiet streets of Cherry Creek as the city slowly awakened around me. Today, however, I altered my route slightly to include a pass by Andrew's office building. As I jogged past Thompson Financial, I noticed the lights were already on in several offices despite the early hour. A familiar car caught my eye in the parking garage entrance, Gerald Wilson's black Mercedes. Gerald was Thompson's operations director and, according to the organizational charts I'd reviewed yesterday, one of the minority partners who held equity in the firm alongside Andrew. On impulse, I stopped my run and entered the building. The security guard recognized me from previous company events. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds. Early start today." "Morning, Dave. Is Gerald Wilson in already?" "Yes, ma'am. Been here since about 5 a.m. Said something about quarterly reports." I nodded. "Thanks. I'll just surprise him with some coffee on my way to the gym." I stopped at the small cafe in the lobby, purchasing 2 large coffees before taking the elevator to the 4th floor. Gerald's corner office door was open, his desk covered with spreadsheets and file folders. At 62, Gerald was nearing retirement, a fact that Andrew had mentioned several times in recent months, usually in the context of partnership redistribution opportunities. With his silver hair and perpetually concerned expression, Gerald looked every bit the conservative financial advisor clients trusted with their life savings. "Coffee delivery," I announced from his doorway. Gerald looked up, surprised. "Olivia, what brings you here at this hour? And in running clothes, no less." I smiled, setting a coffee on his desk. Jogging past and saw the lights on. Thought someone might need caffeine. "You're a saint," he said gratefully, taking a long sip. "These quarterly compliance reviews will be the death of me." I perched on the edge of a visitor chair. "Sounds tedious. Andrew mentioned you might be thinking about retirement soon. Is that still the plan?" Gerald's expression clouded slightly. "That's the rumor, apparently. Though I haven't made any definitive announcements." "Oh?" Andrew seemed to think it was decided. "Did he now?" Gerald's tone sharpened. "Interesting, considering. I've only had preliminary discussions with Jeffrey about succession planning." Jeffrey Thompson, the founder who still maintained a presence despite reducing his ownership stake. I filed away this discrepancy for later consideration. "I'm sure he was just getting ahead of himself," I said lightly. "You know Andrew, always, planning 3 steps ahead." "Indeed." Gerald took another sip of coffee. "How are things at Hawthorne? Still climbing the corporate ladder?" "Steady as ever." I glanced at my watch. "I should get going. Meetings start at 8 or sharp." I stood to leave, then paused. "Actually, Gerald, I've been meaning to ask, do you know if Thompson works with any clients in Miami, specifically in real estate?" Gerald looked thoughtful. "We have a few clients with property investments in South Florida, but no significant concentration there. Why do you ask?" "Just curious. A friend is looking at investment properties in that area, and I wondered if Andrew might have connections." "There. Not that I'm aware of. Our Miami clients are primarily handled by our Southeast Regional Office. Andrew's portfolio is almost exclusively Colorado-based, with a few in the Pacific Northwest." "Interesting. Thanks, Gerald. Enjoy the coffee." As I left Thompson Financial, I added this new information to my mental file. Andrew's activities in Miami weren't connected to Thompson's client base, which meant the deception extended beyond our personal finances into his professional representations as well. Back at home, I showered and dressed for work, selecting a steel gray suit that Catherine once described as my battle armor. Andrew was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, sipping coffee and scrolling through news on his tablet. "Morning," he said absently. "You were up early." "Morning run," I replied, pouring myself coffee. "Usual Tuesday routine." He nodded without looking up. "I'll be late tonight. Quarterly client reviews all day, then dinner with the Harrington account." Another lie, delivered without hesitation. I wondered if he was actually going to be in the office at all, or if he had plans to contact Vanessa. I needed to know more about his schedule, his communications with her, his plans for our money. "No problem," I said. "I've got a strategy session that might run late anyway." We moved around each other in the kitchen with the practiced choreography of a long-married couple, passing the cream, sharing the toaster, avoiding substantive conversation. The familiarity of it felt surreal given what I now knew. "Andrew," I said as I gathered my briefcase, "I was thinking about our quarterly financial review. It's coming up next week, right?" He glanced up, a flicker of something, alarm, annoyance, crossing his face. "Is it that time already? Things have been so busy, I haven't prepared the usual reports." "That's fine," I said easily. "I can get started. What's the password for the Schwab account again? I always forget." "I'll handle it, Liv," he said, his tone taking on that slightly patronizing quality I'd grown accustomed to. No need for you to worry about that right now. I'll have everything ready by next weekend. If you're sure, I just thought with your busy schedule, I said I'll handle it. His tone was sharper now. Besides, there have been some adjustments to our portfolio. It would be confusing without the proper context. Adjustments. That was one way to describe the systematic draining of our accounts. Whatever you think best, I conceded, watching him relax slightly at my acquiescence. Have a good day with your clients. At Hawthorne Capital, I spent the morning assembling the business case for Thomson Financial's restructuring. The company's client base was solid but stagnant. Their investment methodologies were sound but conservative to the point of underperformance. Most importantly, their organizational structure was top-heavy with redundant management positions, including, I noted with grim satisfaction, Andrew's role as senior advisor. Lisa, I called my assistant mid-morning. Can you get me Thomson Financial's employee performance reviews for the past 2 years? Focus on the advisory team. Through Evergreen's records? Yes, and I'll need their client retention statistics. Broken down by the advisor. While Lisa gathered that information, I placed a call to Richard Calloway at Preston & Winters, the divorce attorney Catherine had recommended. Mr. Calloway's office, a professional voice answered. This is Olivia Reynolds, Chief Strategy Officer at Hawthorne Capital. Catherine Blackwell suggested I speak with Mr. Calloway about a private matter. Of course, Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Calloway has an opening tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Would that work for you? An early meeting would be perfect. I could attend without disrupting my work schedule or alerting Andrew. That's perfect. Thank you. Next, I called Marcus. I need more information about Vanessa Carson and the property in Palm Beach, I said when he answered. Specifically, whether Andrew has purchased real estate there or is leasing, and what financial arrangements exist between them. I've already started digging, Marcus replied. Property records show a condo at the Azure purchased 7 months ago by an LLC called Sunset Horizons. Vanessa Carson is listed as the property manager, but the beneficial owner of the LLC is hidden behind layers of corporate structure. Leading back to the Cayman account? Most likely. I'm still tracing the connections. There's something else you should know. Vanessa Carson isn't just a random real estate agent. She specializes in high-net-worth client relations for Platinum Coast Properties, one of the largest luxury real estate firms in South Florida. So she has access to wealthy clients herself, I mused, including, potentially, investment clients. Exactly. And according to social media, she travels frequently between Miami, Palm Beach, and New York, always first class, always at high-end venues. An expensive lifestyle. Very. One that would benefit significantly from regular infusions of cash. Process this information, adding it to my growing understanding of Andrew's deception. Keep digging, Marcus. I need to understand the full financial picture before I make my next move. After ending the call, I stared out my office window at the Denver skyline. The pieces were starting to form a clearer pattern, but significant questions remained. How long had Andrew been planning this? Was Vanessa just an affair, or was there a deeper scheme involving my money? And most pressing, how much more would he try to take before I stopped him? My intercom buzzed. I have those performance reviews. You requested, Lisa announced. And there's something interesting in the client retention data. Bring it in, I replied, turning my attention to the next phase of gathering evidence. The clearer the picture became, the more devastating, and comprehensive my response would be. These client retention figures are fascinating, I said, scanning the reports Lisa had provided. Andrew has the highest initial acquisition rate among Thomson's advisors, but his 3-year retention is the lowest by a significant margin. Lisa nodded. I thought that stood out too. He brings in new clients successfully, but they tend to leave within 24 or 36 months. I studied the pattern more closely. Do we know where these clients go after leaving Thomson? Not specifically, but according to exit interviews, most cite seeking more aggressive growth strategies as their reason for leaving. This information created an interesting picture. Andrew excelled at acquiring wealthy clients, but couldn't maintain those relationships long-term. Was there a connection between this pattern and his activities with Vanessa Carson? My phone rang. Andrew's office line. Olivia Reynolds. I answered professionally, as I always did during business hours. Hey, it's me, Andrew said. I forgot. To mention, Jeffrey Thompson invited us to his annual charity gala on Saturday. Black tie at the Ritz-Carlton. Can you make it? The Thompson Financial Charity Gala was a significant event in Denver's financial community, drawing wealthy clients and industry influencers. Andrew had always viewed it as an important networking opportunity. This Saturday? That's short notice. I know, but Jeffrey specifically mentioned hoping you'd attend. Something about introducing you to some of his connections. That was unusual. While I'd met Jeffrey Thompson several times over the years, he'd never shown particular interest in my professional network. I'll check my calendar, I replied neutrally. Speaking of connections, I ran into Gerald Wilson this morning. He seemed surprised when I mentioned his retirement plans. A brief silence. You saw Gerald? Where? I stopped by Thompson on my morning run to get coffee. The building was open. What were you doing there? His tone had shifted from casual to concerned. Just being friendly. Anyway, Gerald seemed to think you were jumping the gun on his retirement plans. Gerald worries too much, Andrew dismissed. He's been talking about retiring for years. It's practically a running joke in the office. If you say so. I kept my tone light. Let me check about Saturday and I'll let you know. After hanging up, I turned back to the reports, but my mind was processing this new information. Andrew was pushing a narrative about Gerald's retirement that Gerald himself disputed. Why? Did it relate to the partnership structure at Thompson? Buzzed Lisa. Can you pull the equity distribution documents for Thompson Financial? I want to understand how partnership shares are reallocated when a partner retires or leaves. While awaiting that information, I received a text from Marcus. Found something. The Azure condo was purchased for $2.1 million, down payment of $600K from Atlantic Shore account. Mortgage in Vanessa Carson's name, but monthly payments coming from the same offshore source. $600,000 of our savings had gone to purchase a luxury condo for Andrew's girlfriend. The number hit me with unexpected force. We had spent years building that financial cushion, postponing vacations, driving practical cars, making calculated decisions about our lifestyle, all with the shared goal of early retirement and financial freedom. Now those dreams were living in Palm Beach with a 29-year-old real estate agent. I texted back, need to know if Andrew has power of attorney or any control over Vanessa's assets. Also, the exact relationship between them, business, romantic, or both. A knock at my door interrupted. My thoughts? Catherine Blackwell entered without waiting for a response, closing the door behind her. I've been thinking about our discussion regarding Thompson, she said, taking a seat across from me. The timing might be advantageous. Jeffrey Thompson has been hinting about fully divesting his remaining shares. If we move now, we could potentially acquire the entire firm under direct Hawthorne management. That would be ideal, I agreed. Have you spoken with him directly? Not yet. We've always communicated through intermediaries. Catherine's gaze was shrewd. But I understand you and your husband have a more personal connection to him. We've attended several of his events over the years. Nothing particularly close. Close enough for an introduction at his charity gala this weekend? I've arranged for Hawthorne to purchase a table, so that explained Andrew's sudden invitation. The financial world's invisible networks were activating. We'll be there, I confirmed. I'll make sure Andrew facilitates a proper introduction. Catherine nodded, satisfied. Excellent. Now, regarding your business case for the restructuring, I've reviewed your preliminary analysis. The board will want concrete projections on cost savings and growth potential under direct management. I'm working on those numbers now. Initial estimates suggest we could eliminate approximately $1.8 million in redundant management positions, while increasing client retention by at least 15% through integration with Hawthorne's broader service offerings. Good. Have the complete presentation ready for Monday's executive committee meeting. Catherine rose to leave, then paused. Have you spoken with Richard Calloway yet? I'm seeing him tomorrow morning. Smart. When personal and professional matters intersect this way, clean legal boundaries become essential. Her expression softened slightly. How are you holding up? The question caught me off guard. Catherine Blackwell wasn't known for personal concern. I'm focused, I replied truthfully. The more I learn, the clearer my path forward becomes. That's why you're valuable to Hawthorne, she said with approval. You see patterns and solutions where others see only problems. After she left, I turned back to my investigation. Lisa had delivered the equity distribution documents for Thompson Financial, which revealed an interesting mechanism. When a partner retired or left the firm, their shares were offered first to existing partners based on seniority and position, with pricing set by a predetermined formula. If Gerald Wilson's 12% stake became available, Andrew would be third in line to purchase additional shares, potentially increasing his ownership to 10–12% of the company, a significant boost from his current 7%. I was still processing this information when my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID displayed Atlantic Trust Bank, our primary financial institution. Ms. Reynolds, this is Michael Cabot from Atlantic Trust's Verification Department. I'm calling regarding a wire transfer request we received today. My pulse quickened. What wire transfer? A request to transfer $210,000 from your joint investment account to an external bank. Our system flagged it due to the size of the transaction. Andrew was moving more money, today, after I'd mentioned our upcoming financial review. I didn't authorize any transfer, I said firmly. Whose authorization is on the request? It appears to be signed by Andrew Reynolds as a joint account holder. He provided all the necessary authentication. Please freeze that transfer immediately, I instructed. In fact, I need all transactions from that account to require dual authentication effective immediately. Of course, Ms. Reynolds. We can implement that security measure right away. Would you like to place a temporary freeze on all your joint accounts until this is resolved? Yes, please. And I'll need to come in personally to review recent transactions. After ending the call, I sat motionless, absorbing this new development. Andrew was accelerating his timeline, moving quickly to extract more funds. What had triggered this urgency? My question about our financial review? My appearance at his office building? Or something else entirely? I needed to confront him, but strategically, with enough information to prevent further denials but not so much that he understood the full extent of my knowledge. I texted Marcus, need to meet, new developments. His response was immediate. My office. 30 minutes. In Marcus's office, I laid out the latest information. Andrew's attempt to transfer more money, the connection to Gerald Wilson's potential retirement, and Catherine's interest in acquiring all of Thompson Financial. The timing suggests Andrew is preparing for something significant, I concluded, possibly using my money to increase his ownership stake at Thompson, or perhaps planning to leave Denver entirely. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. My sources have uncovered more about Vanessa Carson. She and Andrew have known each other for approximately 14 months. They met at a financial conference in Miami, where she was representing high-net-worth property investments to financial advisors. A business connection initially, then? Exactly. But there's more. Vanessa has been linked romantically to several wealthy clients in the past, including a hedge fund manager who was later charged with securities fraud. She wasn't implicated legally, but there were questions about her knowledge of his activities. So she has a pattern of relationships with men who can financially benefit her, I noted. What about her connection to Andrew professionally? Is there evidence they're working together beyond the personal relationship? That's where it gets interesting, Marcus replied, turning his computer screen to show me a document. Platinum Coast Properties, where Vanessa works, has a client referral program that pays substantial commissions for bringing in buyers for their luxury properties. According to their internal records, which my investigator was able to access, Andrew has received approximately $185,000 in referral fees over the past 11 months. He's referring Thompson clients to her, I realized. That explains the retention pattern. He brings in wealthy clients, directs them toward Miami real estate investments through Vanessa, collects referral fees, then loses the clients when they realize their portfolios aren't performing as promised. And based on the transaction timing, those referral payments go directly into the Cayman account, not through Thompson's books. I processed this information, the full picture becoming clearer. So this isn't just about an affair. It's a financial scheme using his position at Thompson to funnel clients to Vanessa, collecting undisclosed referral fees, and using our savings to establish a luxury lifestyle in Miami, possibly as a base for expanding these operations. That's my assessment, Marcus agreed. And now he appears to be accelerating his timeline. Because he senses I'm on to him, I concluded, I need to confront him tonight, before he can move any more assets or alert Vanessa that I'm investigating. Be careful, Marcus warned. You don't want to reveal too much about what you know or how you know it. Not until all the legal pieces are in place. I'll be strategic, I promised. Just enough confrontation to prevent further damage while I finalize my plans. When I returned to my office, a bouquet of roses had been delivered to my desk, 24 red blooms in an elegant crystal vase. The card read simply, "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Love, Andrew," a calculated gesture. Andrew had always been good at romantic gestures when he felt it necessary, particularly when he was hiding something. I left the flowers on my desk and spent the remainder of the afternoon finalizing my presentation for the executive committee. By 6 p.m., I had a comprehensive restructuring plan for Thompson Financial that would integrate it fully into Hawthorne's operations, eliminating several senior positions, including Andrew's, while retaining the valuable client base and advisor talent. The drive home was tense with anticipation. I had decided on a measured approach. Confront Andrew about the attempted wire transfer without revealing the full extent of my investigation. His reaction would provide valuable information about his state of mind and future intentions. When I arrived home, I found Andrew in the kitchen, opening a bottle of expensive Cabernet, one we had been saving for a special occasion. "There you are," he greeted me with unusual warmth. "I thought we could have a nice dinner tonight. I picked up steaks from that butcher you like." The dining table was already set with our best china and crystal glasses, another calculated touch. In 15 years of marriage, Andrew had prepared dinner perhaps a dozen times, always when he wanted something or was making amends for something. "What's the occasion?" I asked, setting my briefcase down. "Do I need an occasion to do something nice for my wife?" He approached, kissing my cheek and handing me a glass of wine. "We've both been so busy lately. I thought we could reconnect." "A bit." I accepted the glass but didn't drink. "Atlantic Trust called me today." His expression faltered for just a moment before recovering. "Oh?" "They were verifying a wire transfer for $210,000. One I didn't authorize." Andrew set his wine glass down carefully. "That was a mistake. I was moving some funds for our portfolio rebalancing and must have entered the wrong account number." "To an account in the Cayman Islands?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you talking about?" "Atlantic Shore Banking, the account where you've been transferring our savings for the past 9 months. Nearly $1 million so far." Andrew's expression cycled rapidly through surprise, denial, and calculation before settling on concerned confusion. "Liv, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I've been rebalancing our portfolio, yes, but everything is properly documented. If Atlantic Trust called about a specific transfer, it was probably just a verification procedure. I froze all. Our joint accounts, I stated flatly. No more transfers without my explicit approval. The flash of anger in his eyes confirmed what I already knew. He had been planning to move more money. You did what? His tone hardened. Based on some paranoid misunderstanding? Olivia, that could damage time-sensitive investment moves. You need to unfreeze those accounts immediately. Not until you explain exactly where our money has been going. Nearly half our savings has disappeared from our joint accounts. Andrew ran a hand through his hair, visibly recalculating his approach. Look, I've been working on some specialized investment strategies, higher yield but requiring specific timing and positioning. That's why I've been moving funds between accounts. And the condo in Palm Beach? That's just an investment strategy too? He went very still. What have you been doing, Olivia? Spying on me? Protecting what's mine, I replied evenly. Our life. Savings that you've been systematically transferring to fund your girlfriend's luxury lifestyle. That's ridiculous, he scoffed. But his eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. I don't know what you think you've discovered, but you're jumping to insane conclusions. Am I? Vanessa Carson, the Azure in Palm Beach, the monthly payments to Azure Properties, Cartier purchases in Miami when you claim to be in Chicago. Should I continue? The color drained from Andrew's face. He took a step back, bumping against the kitchen counter. For a moment, he seemed genuinely at a loss for words. Then his expression hardened. You had no right to investigate me like this. Those financial decisions were made for our benefit. Stop lying, Andrew. I've seen the photos of you together. I know about the $600,000 down payment on her condo. I know about the referral fees you've been collecting for sending clients to Platinum Coast Properties. His expression changed then, from defensive to calculating. He took a slow sip of wine before responding. Clearly you've been busy playing detective. Did it ever occur to you to simply ask me about our investments? I'm asking now. Andrew sighed dramatically, as if dealing with a particularly difficult client. Vanessa is a business associate, not a girlfriend. We've been developing an investment opportunity together, a luxury real estate venture with significant potential returns. Yes, I've allocated some of our portfolio to this venture, but the projected ROI justified the investment. Without discussing it with me, without a single mention of this business associate or the hundreds of thousands of dollars you've diverted to her. I tried to discuss diversifying our investments several times, but you always deferred to my judgment on financial matters. His tone became condescending. You've never shown interest in the details, Olivia. Numbers bore you. You've said it yourself. The audacity of his gaslighting was almost impressive. I had never said any such thing, but he delivered the lie with such conviction that for a moment, I almost questioned my own memory. And I suppose the Cartier purchases were just business expenses? I asked. Client gifts, he replied smoothly. Relationship management is a crucial part of high-end financial services. And the lies about your whereabouts? The fictional conference? In Chicago while you were actually in Miami. Strategic meetings that required discretion. The real estate venture is still in development. Confidentiality has been essential to securing the right partners and properties. Each lie came easier than the last, woven together into an alternate reality where his deception was merely business acumen that I was too unsophisticated to understand. Then you won't mind showing me the business plan for this venture, I said. The partnership agreements, the projected returns, the client contracts. Since it's all legitimate business involving our joint savings, I should be fully informed, don't you think? Andrew's jaw tightened. The documents are at my office. I can show you everything tomorrow. And Vanessa's role in all this? Why does she need a $2.1 million condo funded by our savings? The property serves multiple purposes: a showcase for potential clients, a base of operations for our Miami market expansion, and yes, an investment property that's already appreciated considerably. I studied him, almost fascinated by his performance. In 15 years of marriage, I had never seen this side of Andrew, the fluid liar, the manipulative salesman willing to fabricate an entire narrative on the spot. "I want to see all the documentation," I insisted. "Every transaction, every agreement, every communication about this venture." "Of course," he agreed too readily. "I'll gather everything first thing tomorrow. But Olivia, you need to unfreeze our accounts immediately. We have time-sensitive transactions pending that could jeopardize the entire investment structure." "No. The accounts remain frozen until I've reviewed everything." His expression hardened. "That's not reasonable. You're acting emotionally rather than rationally. Exactly why I've managed our finances independently." "Independently?" I repeated. "Is that what you call stealing our joint savings?" "I haven't stolen anything," he snapped, his composure cracking. "Every move I've made has been for our financial benefit. Just because you can't understand sophisticated investment strategies doesn't make them theft." I set my untouched wine glass on the counter. "I'm staying at the Four Seasons tonight. I expect complete documentation of this sophisticated investment strategy by tomorrow evening, including all communications with Vanessa Carson and Platinum Coast Properties." "Running away doesn't solve anything," Andrew said, his tone shifting to concerned husband. "Let's discuss this rationally, Liv. We've been married for 15 years. Surely that counts for something." "It counted for a lot," I replied quietly. "Until you decided our marriage vows and financial partnership were open to reinterpretation." I turned to leave the kitchen, and he reached for my arm. "Olivia, wait." I stepped back, avoiding his touch. "One more thing. If you attempt to contact Vanessa Carson or transfer any more of our money, I'll go directly to the SEC with the evidence of your undisclosed referral fees. I'm sure Thompson Financial would be very interested to learn about that arrangement as well." The threat landed precisely as intended. Andrew's face paled, his confident facade crumbling. "You wouldn't do that," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Try me," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "You've never really understood what I'm capable of, Andrew. That's about to change." The Four Seasons lobby glowed with warm lighting as I approached the reception desk, overnight bag in hand. I had packed quickly and methodically after leaving. Andrew standing in our kitchen, taking only essentials plus secured copies of important documents I'd been gathering. "Good evening, Ms. Reynolds," the desk clerk greeted me, recognizing me from previous Hawthorne corporate events. "Will you be staying with us tonight?" "Yes. I need a room for several nights, possibly longer." "Of course. We have a lovely corner suite available on the 20th floor." As she processed my personal credit card, my phone vibrated with text from Andrew. "This is ridiculous, Liv. Come home so we can talk properly. You're overreacting based on incomplete information. I can explain everything. Just come back." I silenced the phone without responding and accepted the key card from the receptionist. "Is there anything else you need this evening, Ms. Reynolds?" "Privacy," I replied. "I'm not accepting visitors or calls." The suite was elegantly appointed with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of downtown Denver illuminated against the night sky. I set my bag down and moved directly to the desk, removing my laptop and the folder of documents I'd brought from home. While the confrontation with Andrew had been necessary to prevent further financial damage, it had also accelerated my timeline. He now knew I was investigating him, which meant he would take defensive actions immediately, contacting Vanessa, potentially destroying evidence, and crafting more elaborate explanations for his behavior. I needed to be methodical. Opening my laptop, I created a new document titled Assessment and Strategy with 3 main sections: Facts confirmed, questions remaining, and strategic options. Under facts confirmed, I listed everything I knew with certainty. Andrew has transferred approximately $92,000 of our joint savings to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands over the past 9 months. He used $600,000 as a down payment on a $2.1 million condo at the Azure in Palm Beach, with the mortgage in Vanessa Carson's name. He has received approximately $185,000 in undisclosed referral fees from Platinum Coast Properties for client referrals, a clear breach of financial industry regulations. He has systematically lied about his whereabouts, claiming to attend conferences while actually meeting Vanessa in Miami. He attempted to transfer an additional $210,000 today, after I mentioned our upcoming financial review. Thompson Financial, where Andrew works, is already owned by Hawthorne Capital, my employer, through Evergreen Partners. Andrew has been positioning himself to acquire more equity in Thompson when Gerald Wilson retires. Catherine Blackwell plans to acquire the remaining shares of Thompson Financial, potentially as soon as this weekend. Under questions remaining, I wrote, "What is the full extent of Andrew and Vanessa's relationship? Purely financial opportunism or genuine emotional attachment? How many Thompson clients has Andrew directed to Vanessa's real estate deals, and have any been harmed financially? Andrew planning to leave Denver permanently for Miami, or maintaining 2 separate lives? Does Jeffrey Thompson know about Andrew's outside referral activities? What is Andrew's next move now that he knows I'm investigating?" I paused, looking out at the city lights as I considered the final section. Strategic options. This required careful thought. My objective wasn't simply revenge, though the betrayal certainly warranted it. I needed a solution that would protect my financial interests, address the professional ethics violations, and position me advantageously for the future. Under strategic options, I began listing possibilities: immediate divorce filing with emergency, motion to freeze all assets and accounts, report Andrew's undisclosed referral arrangements to Thompson Financial Management and regulatory authorities, accelerate Hawthorne's acquisition of Thompson's remaining shares, positioning for direct management control, contact Vanessa Carson directly to understand her perspective, and possibly drive a wedge between her and Andrew. Use evidence of financial impropriety as leverage for a private settlement that recovers my stolen assets. Each option had advantages and risks. Option 1 would protect remaining assets, but might drive Andrew to destroy evidence. Option 2 would create professional consequences for Andrew, but could potentially damage Thompson's reputation before Hawthorne completed its acquisition. Option 3 offered the most comprehensive solution, but required coordination with Catherine and the board. My phone rang. Catherine Blackwell's direct line. I answered immediately. "I've been informed you're staying at the Four Seasons tonight," she said without preamble. "I take it the confrontation with your husband didn't go well?" "It went exactly as expected," I replied. He attempted to lie, then gaslight me about the financial transfers. When those failed, he invented a fictional investment venture to explain his actions. "And you left before he could further develop his narrative," Catherine concluded. "Smart. What's your next move?" "I'm developing several options, but I believe accelerating Hawthorne's full acquisition of Thompson offers the most comprehensive solution." "I agree. Have dinner with me tomorrow evening, 7:30 in my private dining room at the Windsor Club. We'll coordinate our approach to Jeffrey Thompson at Saturday's gala." After hanging up, I returned to my strategic assessment. Option 3 was looking increasingly viable, particularly with Catherine's direct support. If Hawthorne took full control of Thompson Financial, I would be positioned to oversee the restructuring, effectively becoming Andrew's boss and controlling his professional future at the same time. I addressed his personal betrayal. My phone buzzed again with another text from Andrew. "I've prepared all the documentation about the investment venture. Where can I meet you tomorrow to review everything?" This was a predictable move. He would attempt to fabricate paperwork overnight to support his lies. Instead of responding, I called Marcus. Andrew is creating fake documentation to cover his actions, I said when he answered. He'll likely backdate contracts, investment proposals, and communications to make it appear that this was all a legitimate business venture he just forgot to mention to me. Do you want me to do anything about it? Marcus asked. Yes, I need definitive proof of when these documents were actually created. Can your IT forensics person access Thompson's servers to monitor his activities tonight? Possibly. Since Thompson is technically a Hawthorne subsidiary, we have legal access to their systems for risk management purposes. Let me make some calls. Perfect. Also, I need everything you can find about Vanessa Carson's previous relationships with financial professionals. Andrew implied their connection was purely business, but I suspect there's more to it. After ending the call, I continued developing my strategy. The Thompson Financial Charity Gala on Saturday would be a critical opportunity. Jeffrey Thompson, Andrew, Vanessa, if she attended. Catherine and key Thompson partners would all be present, the perfect setting to implement a coordinated plan. My primary obstacle was time. Andrew now knew I was investigating and would move quickly to cover his tracks. I needed to secure additional evidence and position my legal protections before he could hide or transfer any more assets. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I approached cautiously, checking the peephole before opening. It was hotel security with a sealed envelope. Ms. Reynolds? This was delivered to the front desk for you with instructions that it be brought up immediately. I accepted the envelope and closed the door, examining it carefully before opening. Inside was a handwritten note from Andrew. Liv, I understand you're upset, but you're making a terrible mistake based on misunderstandings. What you've discovered is part of a confidential investment strategy I've been developing that could triple our net worth within 2 years. Please meet me for breakfast tomorrow at 7 a.m. in the hotel restaurant. I'll bring everything you need to see to understand what's really happening. 15 years of marriage deserves at least this consideration. Andrew. His handwriting was uncharacteristically rushed, betraying his anxiety despite the confident wording. I set the note aside and returned to my laptop, adding a new item to my strategic options. Allow Andrew to present his fabricated documentation to gauge the extent of his deception and identify potential legal vulnerabilities in his narrative. Meeting with him might provide valuable insights into his strategy and mental state. However, it would also give him an opportunity to manipulate me emotionally, something he'd proven quite skilled at over the years. My 7:30 a.m. appointment with Richard Calloway tomorrow provided a perfect excuse to decline the breakfast meeting. I texted Andrew, "Can't meet for breakfast. Already have a 7:30 appointment. We'll call you afterward." His response was immediate. "Cancel it. This is more important. Our future is at stake." The commanding tone was typical Andrew, assuming his priorities. Automatically superseded mine. I didn't reply, turning instead to my evening appointment with divorce attorney Richard Calloway. At 7:30 a.m. the next morning, I sat in Richard Calloway's office at Preston and Winters. The space exudes old-world legal authority, dark wood paneling, leather-bound law books, and a massive desk that positioned clients in subordinate seating. Richard himself matched the setting, mid-60s, precisely tailored suit, and the measured speech patterns of someone who calculated the billing value of every word. "Catherine briefed me on the broad strokes," he said after I'd outlined my situation. "Financially, this is straightforward. The transfers were made without your knowledge or consent from joint accounts, creating a clear case for recovery. The complicating factor is the offshore nature of the primary account. Can we recover the funds? With the right approach, yes. The Cayman Islands banking regulations favor privacy but aren't impervious to proper legal pressure, particularly in cases of demonstrated fraud." He made a note in a leather portfolio. "More interesting is the Thompson financial angle. Your position at Hawthorne creates unusual leverage." I nodded. "That's why I'm here. I need a strategy that addresses both the personal financial theft and the professional opportunity. I'd recommend a two-track approach, Richard said. First, we file emergency motions to freeze all remaining domestic assets and formally document the unauthorized transfers for eventual recovery. Second, we prepare a private settlement proposal leveraging your knowledge of his SEC violations, the undisclosed referral fees in particular. And timing? The emergency motions should be filed immediately. The settlement proposal should wait until you've secured your position in the Thompson acquisition. You want maximum leverage when you present terms. What about the charity gala? This weekend, Andrew, Vanessa, Jeffrey Thompson, and Catherine will all be present. Richard considered this. That creates both risk and opportunity. If Vanessa Carson attends as Andrew's guest, it confirms a relationship beyond professional boundaries that he'd have difficulty explaining. However, it also creates potential for public confrontation, which would be disadvantageous at this stage. I can handle Andrew in public, I assured him. My concern is protecting my legal position while Hawthorne finalizes the Thompson acquisition. In that case, I'll prepare the emergency motions today and have them ready to file by this afternoon. For the gala, maintain professional appearances while gathering any additional evidence of Andrew's relationship with Carson. Once Hawthorne's acquisition is secure, we'll move forward with the comprehensive settlement proposal. After leaving Richard's office, I headed directly to Hawthorne rather than returning to the Four Seasons. Andrew had texted me 6 more times. Since last night, his messages growing increasingly urgent. Missed you at breakfast. Where are you? We need to talk before this gets any further out of hand. I've spoken with Jeffrey. He's concerned about how your actions might affect Thompson's reputation. That last message caught my attention. Andrew was trying to leverage Jeffrey Thompson against me. A predictable but potentially problematic move if he succeeded in turning Thompson hostile before Catherine could finalize the acquisition. At Hawthorne, I found Lisa waiting with updated information on Thompson Financial's client, base and performance metrics. I've analyzed the client movement patterns, she said, handing me a report. Approximately 22% of Andrew's clients who left Thompson within the 24-36-month window made significant real estate investments in South Florida within 6 months of leaving. Through Platinum Coast properties? For the ones we could track, yes. Most purchased luxury condos or vacation properties priced between $1.5 and $4 million. And the performance of their investment portfolios while under Andrew's management? Consistently underperformed market benchmarks by 8 to 12%. With unusually high cash positions maintained prior to their real estate purchases. The pattern was clear. Andrew had been systematically positioning client assets for real estate purchases through Vanessa, likely receiving undisclosed commissions on both ends of the transactions. It was a textbook case of financial advisor misconduct, placing personal gain above client interests. My desk phone rang. Jeffrey Thompson himself. Olivia, good morning. I hope I'm not interrupting, he began, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone who'd spent decades cultivating wealthy clients. Not at all, Jeffrey. What can I do for you? I understand there might be some domestic complications between you and Andrew. He's expressed concern about potential disruptions to client relationships. So Andrew had gone directly to Thompson, attempting to position me as emotionally unstable and professionally threatening. A predictable defensive move. How thoughtful of him to involve you in our personal matters, I replied smoothly. While I appreciate your concern, I can assure you that my professional conduct remains unaffected. In fact, I'm looking forward to seeing you at the charity gala on Saturday. Ah, yes, the gala. He seemed momentarily thrown by my calm response. That's actually part of why I'm calling. Catherine Blackwell mentioned she'll be attending at your invitation. That's correct. She's expressed interest in deepening Hawthorne's relationship with Thompson Financial. A pause. I wasn't aware you had discussed our firm with her. Just professional courtesy. As you know, financial services is a relationship business, and Catherine values connecting with respected industry leaders like yourself. I see. Another pause. Will you be bringing anyone to the gala? Or will Andrew be your escort? An interesting question. He was fishing to understand the current state of my relationship with Andrew. I believe Andrew mentioned he might be bringing a business associate, I said casually. I'll be escorting Catherine since she doesn't know many people in Denver's financial community. A business associate? Jeffrey's surprise confirmed my suspicion. Andrew hadn't mentioned bringing Vanessa. I wasn't aware of that arrangement. Perhaps I misunderstood. In any case, I look forward to introducing you to Catherine on Saturday. She's particularly interested in your perspective on wealth management trends for ultra-high net worth clients. After ending the call, I considered this new development. Andrew had spoken with Jeffrey but hadn't mentioned bringing Vanessa to the gala. Was he planning to keep her away to maintain his cover story of a purely professional relationship? Or was he planning to introduce her in a controlled setting to support his investment venture narrative? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Found something significant. Where can we meet? My office. Now. 20 minutes later, Marcus closed my office door behind him, his expression unusually serious. My IT forensics contact monitored Andrew's activities on Thompson's servers last night. Between 8:15 p.m. and 2:40 a.m., he created and backdated multiple documents, investment prospectuses, partnership agreements, client presentations, all featuring Sunset Horizons LLC and Platinum Coast Properties. He's fabricating an elaborate paper trail to support his claim of a legitimate investment venture. As expected, I nodded. What else? More concerning, he accessed Thompson's client database and modified contact records for approximately 15 high-net-worth clients, changing email addresses and phone numbers. This was unexpected. He's attempting to hide client contacts so I can't reach out to them directly. Exactly. But there's more. Our investigation into Vanessa Carson uncovered something significant. Marcus handed me a folder. She was previously engaged to Martin Whitaker, a Boston investment advisor who lost his license 3 years ago for defrauding clients through real estate investment schemes. I opened the folder to find newspaper clippings and regulatory filings detailing Whitaker's downfall. His scheme had involved convincing wealthy clients to invest in luxury real estate developments that were either overvalued or non-existent. Vanessa had been questioned by investigators but never charged. The pattern is identical, I observed. Target wealthy clients, direct them toward overpriced luxury real estate, collect fees and commissions on both ends. And when the scheme collapsed in Boston, Vanessa relocated to Miami and apparently found a new partner in Andrew. This information changed my assessment significantly. What I had initially framed as a personal betrayal, Andrew stealing our savings to fund a relationship with a younger woman, now appeared to be part of a calculated financial fraud scheme with Vanessa as the experienced operator and Andrew as her newest accomplice. This is why he's been moving our savings offshore, I realized. He's not just funding a lifestyle with Vanessa. He's establishing a financial escape route in case their scheme is discovered. That's my assessment as well, Marcus agreed. And now that you've confronted him, he may accelerate his timeline. I turned to the window, processing this new information. Andrew wasn't just a cheating husband or a thief. He was potentially involved in systematic client fraud alongside a partner who had experience evading consequences when similar schemes collapsed. We need to move more aggressively, I decided. Contact Richard Calloway and tell him to file those emergency motions immediately. Then call Catherine. We need to meet before tomorrow night's gala. This isn't just about restructuring Thompson anymore. It's about preventing Andrew and Vanessa from defrauding more clients. As Marcus left to make the calls, I returned to my strategic assessment document. The situation had evolved beyond personal betrayal into something more serious. A potential financial fraud scheme that threatened not just my savings, but the assets of Thompson clients as well. This changed everything, including my approach to Saturday's charity gala and my ultimate plan for dealing with Andrew. By noon, my office had transformed into a command center. Lisa had cleared my schedule, citing a strategic acquisition emergency, while Marcus coordinated with Richard Calloway on the emergency motions. I needed additional allies, people with specialized expertise and absolute discretion. My first call was to Elaine Porter, Hawthorne's chief risk officer. At 54, Elaine had spent 20 years in banking regulation before joining Hawthorne, giving her unparalleled insight into financial compliance issues. "I need your expertise on a sensitive matter," I explained when she arrived at my office, closing the door behind her. "What I'm about to share involves potential regulatory violations at Thompson Financial." Elaine's expression remained professionally neutral as I outlined Andrew's undisclosed referral arrangements with Platinum Coast, properties and the pattern of client movements. "This is textbook conflict of interest," she confirmed after reviewing the data. "Financial advisors cannot receive compensation for directing clients to specific investments without full disclosure to both the client and their firm. If this pattern is as systematic as it appears, we're looking at significant regulatory violations." What would the standard protocol be for handling this type of situation? Typically, immediate termination of the advisor, client notification, investigation of all affected accounts, and self-reporting to regulatory authorities, Elaine replied. However, given Hawthorne's ownership interest in Thompson through Evergreen Partners, we have additional considerations, such as reputational risk through association. If this becomes public before we've established clear separation between the misconduct and Thompson's overall operations, it could damage both firms. And if we're simultaneously pursuing full acquisition of Thompson? Elaine's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That creates both risk and opportunity. The risk is acquiring an entity with undisclosed regulatory problems. The opportunity is controlling the remediation process completely. "I need your help designing a risk containment strategy," I said. "One that protects Thompson's legitimate clients and advisors while isolating Andrew and anyone who facilitated his activities." "I can work with that," Elaine nodded. "I'll need complete client transaction records and all communications between Andrew and these Florida real estate entities. Lisa will get you everything we have. Also, I'd like you to attend the Thompson Charity Gala tomorrow night as part of our team." Unofficially assessing regulatory exposure, Elaine concluded. Smart. After Elaine left, I received a text from Catherine. "Emergency meeting confirmed for 4 p.m. Windsor Club private dining room. Bringing Franklin Taylor." Franklin Taylor was Hawthorne's general counsel. Catherine was assembling her own team of heavyweights, sensing the increased complexity of the situation. My phone rang. Andrew again. After 6 ignored calls since morning, I decided to answer. "Where are you?" he demanded without preamble. "I've been trying to reach you all day." "I'm working, Andrew," I replied calmly. "Something you might consider focusing on as well." "This is ridiculous, Olivia. I've prepared all the documentation about the investment venture. You're refusing to even look at it." "I have a counter-proposal," I said. "Meet me at Preston and Winters at 2 p.m. Bring your documentation and we'll review it with my attorney present." A telling pause. "You've involved attorneys already? That's completely unnecessary and potentially damaging to both our reputations." 4 p.m., Preston and Winters. "Or I can proceed without your input." After a moment of tense silence, he conceded. "Fine. Text me the address." I hung up and immediately called Richard Calloway to brief him on the upcoming meeting. This confrontation would serve multiple purposes, giving me direct access to Andrew's fabricated documentation, establishing legal boundaries for our interactions going forward, and most importantly, preventing him from taking more drastic measures out of desperation. My next call was to Sophia Martinez, Hawthorne's head of digital forensics. While technically part of our cybersecurity team, Sophia's expertise extended to all forms of digital investigation. Her quick mind and uncompromising attention to detail had saved Hawthorne from numerous potential disasters over the years. "I need your help with a delicate matter," I began when she arrived. It involves personal and professional boundaries, so I understand if you'd prefer not to participate. Try me, Sophia replied, her direct manner refreshing amid the careful corporate speak that dominated most executive conversations. I explained the situation, focusing on the technical aspects: Andrew's creation of backdated documents, his modification of client records, and the potential digital trail connecting him to Vanessa Carson. So you need me to verify document creation dates, recover original client information, and map communications between your husband and this Vanessa person, Sophia summarized. All technically feasible, though the offshore accounts will be trickier. Hawthorne's ownership of Thompson through Evergreen Partners gives us legal access to their systems, I noted. And the emergency motions being filed today will provide judicial authorization for investigating the financial accounts. Sophia nodded. Give me admin access to Thompson's servers for 24 hours. I'll recover everything he tried to hide. As Sophia left, Lisa entered with an update about the charity gala preparations. Catherine's office has confirmed Hawthorne's table placement adjacent to Jeffrey Thompson's. The seating chart currently shows Andrew seated with the Thompson executives, while you're at the Hawthorne table with Catherine. Perfect. Has there been any confirmation about who Andrew is bringing as his guest? Nothing official, but the Thompson office administrator mentioned arranging a hotel room for a special guest from Miami arriving tomorrow afternoon. So Vanessa was indeed coming to Denver for the gala, a significant development. Was Andrew planning to introduce her as his business partner to support his investment venture narrative? Or keeping her presence low-key to avoid raising questions? One more thing, Lisa added. Gerald Wilson called. He'd like to meet with you privately before the gala. Said it's important and confidential. Gerald's request was intriguing. As Thompson's operations director and a minority partner, he would have visibility into Andrew's client activities that others might miss. Perhaps he had noticed irregularities himself. Arrange for me to meet Gerald at 3 p.m. tomorrow at the Four Seasons lobby bar, I instructed. And Lisa, I'll need your help preparing a comprehensive briefing document for Catherine before our meeting this afternoon. Everything we know about Andrew's activities, the client patterns, and Vanessa Carson's history. At 1:45 p.m., I arrived at Preston and Winters, where Richard Calloway was waiting in a conference room. The emergency motions have been filed, he confirmed. All domestic accounts and assets are now legally frozen pending full financial disclosure and court review. And the offshore accounts? We've initiated the process through international banking channels, but that will take longer. However, any attempts to move funds from those accounts now would constitute clear evidence of intent to hide assets, strengthening our case significantly. Good. When Andrew arrives, I want to review his fabricated documentation without revealing how much we already know about his activities with Vanessa Carson. Understood. Focus on inconsistencies and creation dates while establishing a record of his claims for future proceedings. At precisely 2 p.m., Andrew was shown into the conference room, leather portfolio in hand. He'd dressed carefully in his most expensive suit, dark blue Tom Ford with a subtle pinstripe, his power outfit for important client meetings. His confident smile faltered slightly at the formal setting. This seems excessive, Liv, he said, eyeing Richard cautiously. We could have resolved this over lunch. Andrew, this is Richard Calloway, my attorney, I replied, ignoring his attempt at casual intimacy. He'll be documenting our conversation today. Attorney? Andrew's expression hardened. I thought we were meeting to discuss our investment venture. We're here to review your documentation, I corrected. Please proceed. With obvious reluctance, Andrew opened his portfolio and removed a stack of professionally printed documents, sliding them across the table. As I tried to explain, Sunset Horizons is a specialized investment vehicle focusing on ultra-luxury real estate in high-growth markets, he began, slipping into his practiced advisor tone. The partnership was formed 9 months ago after extensive Market analysis identified significant arbitrage opportunities in the Palm Beach corridor. I examined the documents, elaborate, professional, and entirely fraudulent. The investment prospectus detailed a sophisticated real estate strategy, complete with market projections, risk assessments, and governance structures. Everything designed to legitimize what was actually theft and fraud. This prospectus is dated 9 months ago, I noted. Yet it was created on Thomson Financial's servers between 8:15 p.m. and 2:40 a.m. last night. Andrew's expression froze. That's ridiculous. These documents have existed since the venture's inception. Digital forensics don't lie, Andrew. Every document here was created within the past 18 hours, then backdated to create the appearance of a legitimate business venture. You're having me investigated? His facade of a reasonable businessman cracked slightly, revealing anger beneath. That's invasive and completely inappropriate. What's inappropriate is transferring nearly $1 million of our joint savings to an offshore account without my knowledge or consent, I replied evenly. Or using $600,000 of those funds as a down payment on a luxury condo for Vanessa Carson. Richard intervened smoothly. Mr. Reynolds, we've filed emergency motions to freeze all joint assets pending full financial disclosure and court review. Any attempts to transfer additional funds would constitute contempt of court. Andrew's face paled, then flushed with anger. This is outrageous. You've completely misinterpreted legitimate business activities based on your emotional insecurities. The gaslighting attempt was so transparent it was almost comical. I maintained my composed expression. Tell me about the referral fees from Platinum Coast Properties. A flicker of genuine alarm crossed his face before he recovered. There are standard industry referral arrangements for qualified client introductions. Everything is documented and compliant with regulatory requirements. Documented where? Not in Thomson's records, not in your client disclosures, not in any regulatory filings. Andrew shifted strategies, leaning forward with an expression of sincere concern. Olivia, you're jeopardizing an extremely promising investment opportunity because of misunderstandings and hasty conclusions. If you'd simply allow me to walk you through the complete structure. I've seen enough, I interrupted, gathering the documents and handing them to Richard. These will be entered as evidence of attempted fraud and misrepresentation. Evidence? Andrew's voice rose. We're husband and wife having a financial disagreement, not opponents in some legal battle. We stopped being husband and wife when you stole our life savings to fund your relationship with Vanessa Carson, I replied calmly. Now we're simply adverse parties in a legal proceeding. This is insane, he sputtered. You have no idea what you're doing or the damage you're causing. Richard interjected again. Mr. Reynolds, I suggest you retain your own counsel immediately. All future communications should be directed through appropriate legal channels. Andrew stood abruptly. Fine. Do you want to play it this way? Jeffrey Thompson is a personal friend. When he hears about this, your position at Hawthorne won't protect you. The threat was empty, but revealing. Andrew still believed his connection to Jeffrey Thompson gave him leverage over me, unaware that Hawthorne already controlled Thompson Financial and was moving to acquire the remaining shares. We're done here, I said, standing as well. One more thing, don't attempt to contact me directly again. All communications should go through Richard. As Andrew stormed out, Richard turned to me with raised eyebrows. He's escalating emotionally. That's good for our legal position, but potentially concerning from a security perspective. I've already enhanced security at my hotel and office, I assured him. But you're right. His reaction suggests he's feeling cornered, which makes him unpredictable. At 3:30 p.m., I left Preston and Winters with digital copies of Andrew's fabricated documents, sending them immediately to Sophia for forensic analysis. The confrontation had confirmed my assessment. Andrew was committed to maintaining his false narrative, believing he could overwhelm me with technical financial jargon and emotional manipulation. His final threat regarding Jeffrey Thompson suggested, His next move would be attempting to leverage Thompson against me professionally. What he didn't realize was that I was already several steps ahead in that game. The Windsor Club occupied the top 2 floors of one of Denver's oldest buildings, its membership restricted to a carefully curated list of the city's power brokers. Catherine Blackwell's private dining room offered spectacular mountain views and absolute privacy, essential for the conversation we were about to have. Catherine was already seated with Franklin Taylor when I arrived. At 68, Franklin had served as Hawthorne's general counsel for over 2 decades, his methodical legal mind complementing Catherine's strategic boldness. "The situation has evolved," Catherine stated without preliminary pleasantries. "Jeffrey, Thompson called me directly this afternoon. This was unexpected." "What prompted that?" "Your husband, apparently." According to Jeffrey, Andrew expressed grave concerns about Hawthorne's interest in Thompson Financial, suggesting a potential hostile takeover attempt disguised as a friendly overture. Andrew was moving faster than anticipated, trying to poison the well before Saturday's gala. "Did Jeffrey seem receptive to that interpretation?" I asked. "Not entirely," Catherine replied. "He seemed more curious than concerned, particularly when I mentioned that any acquisition discussions would naturally include consideration of current management's performance and ethical standards." Franklin added, "Jeffrey inquired specifically about your role in Hawthorne's interest in Thompson. I believe he's attempting to determine whether this is a personal matter bleeding into professional territory." "Which, of course, it isn't," Catherine said firmly. "Hawthorne's interest in acquiring Thompson's remaining shares is purely strategic, regardless of your personal situation with Andrew." I nodded, appreciating Catherine's clear positioning. "That's precisely how I've approached this, from the beginning. But there are additional complications you should be aware of." I outlined the findings about Andrew's client referral scheme with Vanessa Carson and her previous connection to Martin Whitaker's fraud case in Boston. Franklin's expression grew increasingly grave. "This creates significant regulatory exposure for Thompson Financial. If Andrew has been receiving undisclosed compensation for directing clients to specific investments, that's a clear violation of fiduciary duty regulations. Which is why I've involved Elaine Porter," I explained. "She's developing a risk containment strategy that would protect Thompson's legitimate operations while isolating Andrew's misconduct." Catherine contemplated this information. "Jeffrey believes he's selling his remaining shares to strengthen Thompson's position. He has no idea he's potentially sitting on a regulatory time bomb, which gives us additional leverage in acquisition negotiations," I noted. "But it also creates urgency to complete the deal before these issues become public." "Agreed," Catherine said decisively. "Our objective for tomorrow's gala is clear. Secure Jeffrey's commitment to sell his remaining shares to Hawthorne, position the transaction as a protective measure for Thompson's legacy, and manage Andrew's attempts to interfere. There's one more complication," I added. "Andrew is bringing Vanessa Carson to the gala tomorrow. Based on his fabricated investment venture documents, I believe he intends to introduce her as his business partner to support his false narrative." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "That's bold. Does he realize the risk of having her in the same room with you?" "He's desperate and cornered," I replied. "He thinks introducing Vanessa in a controlled professional context will legitimize his story and undermine my claims. Then we'll need to be prepared for that scenario as well." Franklin noted, "If Carson is indeed part of a systematic fraud scheme, having her in the same room with potential victims creates both risk and opportunity." "I agree," said Catherine. "Olivia, I want you focused on Jeffrey Thompson tomorrow night. Secure his commitment to the acquisition, regardless of whatever drama Andrew attempts to create." "What about Vanessa Carson?" I asked. A small, calculated smile appeared on Catherine's face. "Leave her to me. I have some experience handling social climbers attempting to exploit my business associates." As the meeting concluded, Catherine held me back momentarily. "Are you certain you can maintain professional focus tomorrow night? Seeing your husband with his mistress at a public event would challenge anyone's composure. I'm not just anyone, I replied evenly. And rest assured, my professional focus has never been sharper. Catherine studied me appraisingly. No, you're not just anyone. That's precisely why Andrew underestimated you, a mistake he'll soon regret profoundly. Back at the Four Seasons, I found a small package waiting at the front desk, delivered by courier from Richard Calloway. Inside was a sealed USB drive with a handwritten note. Digital forensics report on document creation timeline. Definitive proof of fabrication. Use as needed. In my suite, I connected the drive to my laptop, reviewing Sophia's preliminary findings. She had traced the creation history of every document Andrew had presented, establishing beyond doubt that all had been created within the past 24 hours. More damning, she had recovered fragments of email communications between Andrew and Vanessa, discussing the need to create convincing documentation and establish a paper trail in response to my confrontation. The evidence was overwhelming. Andrew hadn't just stolen our savings. He had engaged in a calculated fraud scheme with Vanessa Carson, targeting wealthy clients while building an offshore escape plan funded by our joint assets. Tomorrow's charity gala would be a turning point, not just for my personal situation with Andrew, but for the professional futures of everyone involved with Thompson Financial. While Andrew believed he was cleverly managing a difficult situation, he remained completely unaware of the true power dynamics at play. He still had no idea he was working for a company I effectively controlled. By tomorrow night, that would change dramatically, along with everything else in his carefully constructed world of lies. The morning of the charity gala dawned clear and bright, Denver's crisp autumn air carrying the promise of change. I'd slept surprisingly well. My mind settled now that all pieces were in position for the evening ahead. My first appointment was with Gerald Wilson, who'd requested our meeting be moved earlier to 11 a.m. We met in a quiet corner of the Four Seasons lobby bar, the space nearly empty at that hour. Gerald looked troubled, fidgeting with his coffee cup as I approached. Thank you for meeting me, Olivia. I wouldn't normally involve myself in a colleague's personal matters, but this situation has professional implications I can't ignore. I appreciate your discretion, I replied. What concerns you? He glanced around before answering. Andrew has been making alarming claims about you at Thompson, suggesting you're using your position at Hawthorne to pursue some kind of vendetta against him and potentially damage Thompson Financial in the process. That's quite an accusation. It gets worse, Gerald continued. Yesterday he called an impromptu meeting with several senior advisors, presenting documents about a high-potential investment venture he claims you're trying to sabotage out of personal animosity. He's positioning himself as the victim of an irrational attack. This aligned with what I'd anticipated. Did these documents mention Sunset Horizons or Platinum Coast properties? Gerald's eyebrows rose. Yes, both. You're familiar with the venture? I'm familiar with the fabrication, I corrected. Those documents were created 2 nights ago on Thompson's servers. The entire venture is a hastily constructed cover story. Gerald sat back, processing this. That's disturbing, but not entirely surprising. There have been irregularities with some of Andrew's client accounts that I've been monitoring quietly. What kind of irregularities? Unusual cash positions, clients making large withdrawals for alternative investments, not managed through Thompson. Account migration patterns that don't align with our typical client behavior. Gerald hesitated. I've been building a file, actually. Nothing conclusive enough to take action on yet, but concerning patterns. This was an unexpected ally. I'd be very interested in seeing that file, Gerald. He nodded slowly. I thought you might. I've brought a copy. He slid a flash drive across the table. What troubles me most is that several of these clients had long-standing relationships with Thompson before Andrew redirected their investments elsewhere. And Jeffrey Thompson, is he aware of these concerns? Gerald shook his head. Jeffrey has been gradually disengaging from daily operations for years. He trusts his senior team implicitly, perhaps too much so. When Andrew joined our partnership, Track, Jeffrey took a special interest in him, seeing him as part of the firm's future leadership. And now? Now, Jeffrey is focused on his legacy and retirement. The potential acquisition by Hawthorne has become his primary concern. He sees it as securing Thompson's future after he fully steps away. I took a thoughtful sip of coffee. And how do you feel about that acquisition, Gerald? His answer surprised me. Relieved, honestly. I've been concerned about the firm's direction. Some of our newer partners, including Andrew, have been pushing for more aggressive growth strategies that I believe compromise our fiduciary commitments to clients. Would you be willing to share your concerns with Catherine Blackwell? As Hawthorne's CEO, she's particularly interested in maintaining Thompson's ethical standards through any acquisition. I'd welcome that conversation, Gerald agreed. Perhaps at the gala tonight? Perfect. I'll arrange an introduction. After Gerald left, I reviewed the contents of his flash drive. The file was meticulously organized, documenting unusual patterns in over 20 client accounts managed by Andrew. Gerald had tracked sudden account liquidations, investment redirections, and client departures, creating a damning timeline that corroborated everything we'd discovered about Andrew's scheme with Vanessa Carson. I forwarded the files to Sophia Martinez with instructions to incorporate them into her forensic analysis, then called Catherine to update her on this new development. Gerald Wilson could be invaluable in the restructuring, Catherine noted after I explained his concerns. His institutional knowledge and ethical stance would provide continuity through the transition. I agree. He's exactly the type of professional we want to retain. Excellent. Now, regarding tonight's strategy, Franklin has prepared acquisition terms to present to Jeffrey. If he agrees in principle, we'll have legal documentation ready for preliminary signatures before the evening ends. And Andrew? Let him make the first move, Catherine advised. Based on what you've shared, he's likely to introduce Vanessa Carson and attempt to establish their business relationship narrative publicly. That presents an opportunity for us to observe their dynamics with others. And if he confronts me directly, maintain professional composure, deflect personal elements, and redirect to appropriate channels. Remember, tonight is about securing Thompson's acquisition, not addressing your personal situation with Andrew. After ending the call, I spent the afternoon reviewing all the evidence we'd gathered and finalizing arrangements for the evening. By 5 p.m., I was at the Four Seasons Spa for my pre-gala preparations, allowing myself this small luxury amid the strategic calculations. As I sat having my hair styled, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Miami number. I think we should talk before tonight. This is Vanessa Carson. The message was unexpected, but not entirely surprising. I considered ignoring it, then decided tactical engagement might provide valuable insight. What would you like to discuss? I replied. The response came quickly. A mutually beneficial resolution to this situation. Coffee in 30 minutes? I'm at the Itaza Hotel bar. This was intriguing. Was Vanessa reaching out independently, or was this coordinated with Andrew? Either way, it presented an opportunity to assess her directly before the evening's events. I'll be there in 40 minutes, I texted back. Vanessa Carson was exactly as her photographs suggested, strikingly beautiful, impeccably styled, with the polished confidence of someone accustomed to leveraging her appearance for professional advantage. She sat at a corner table in the bar, a sparkling water with lime before her. Olivia, she greeted me with a practiced smile. Thank you for meeting me. I took the seat across from her. I'm curious about what you think we have to discuss, Ms. Carson. Please, call me Vanessa. Her Miami accent was subtle but noticeable. I thought it might be helpful for us to speak directly, woman to woman, without Andrew's interpretations. Complicating matters. Go on. She leaned forward slightly. I believe you've misunderstood the nature of my relationship with Andrew. We're business partners developing a specialized investment channel for high-net-worth individuals seeking luxury real estate opportunities. That's the same fiction Andrew presented, I noted, complete with backdated documents created 2 nights ago. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Our partnership documentation was established months ago when we formalized the venture. Let's not waste time with lies, Vanessa. I know about Martin Whitaker. In Boston, I know about the referral fees. I know about the $600,000 down payment on your Azure condo from my savings. She recovered quickly, her expression shifting to pragmatic calculation. I see Andrew wasn't exaggerating about your investigative thoroughness. That's actually why I wanted to meet. I respect competence. What exactly are you proposing? A separate piece, she replied smoothly. Andrew doesn't know I'm meeting you. Frankly, I'm reassessing my position given recent developments. You're considering cutting him loose, I translated. Vanessa shrugged elegantly. Business partnerships, like all relationships, require ongoing evaluation of their viability. Andrew's handling of this situation has raised concerns about his crisis management capabilities. And what would this separate piece entail? Information, she said simply. I have documentation of every client transaction, every referral fee, every communication about investment redirections, all evidence that could be valuable to you personally and professionally in exchange for immunity from whatever regulatory actions might be forthcoming, and retention of certain assets already transferred to me. So Vanessa was offering to betray Andrew to save herself, a coldly transactional proposal that revealed much about their relationship. Why would you think I have the authority to offer regulatory immunity? A knowing smile played at her lips. Because I've done my research too, Olivia. Hawthorne Capital controls Thompson Financial through Evergreen Partners, and you're Hawthorne's chief strategy officer. You're not just Andrew's wife, you're effectively his boss, though he doesn't know it yet. This was unexpected. Vanessa had uncovered the ownership connection that Andrew had missed entirely. Impressive research, I acknowledged, but incomplete. Any immunity arrangement would require multiple approvals beyond my authority, and retention of fraudulently obtained assets is unlikely regardless of cooperation. I'm flexible on terms, Vanessa countered. My priority is positioning advantageously for whatever comes next. Submit your documentation to this email address, I said, sliding a business card across the table. Once we've assessed its value, we can discuss potential arrangements through appropriate legal channels. Vanessa pocketed the card with a satisfied nod. I knew you'd be reasonable. Unlike Andrew, you recognize that business is ultimately about pragmatic outcomes, not emotional attachments. Speaking of Andrew, does he know about this meeting? No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way for now. He's been increasingly erratic since your confrontation. In what way? Paranoid, controlling, obsessively monitoring news about Hawthorne and Thompson. He's convinced you're orchestrating some elaborate professional takedown. And what do you think? I asked, genuinely curious about her assessment. Vanessa studied me for a moment. I think Andrew made the classic mistake of underestimating a woman's capabilities because he was blinded by his own ego. A mistake I wouldn't make. With that, she stood gracefully. I should go prepare for tonight. Consider my offer, Olivia. Unlike Andrew, I believe in cutting losses when necessary rather than doubling down on failing strategies. After she left, I sat contemplating this new development. Vanessa's willingness to abandon Andrew at the first sign of trouble was telling. Their relationship was purely transactional, a business arrangement rather than an emotional affair. That knowledge should have been comforting, but somehow it made Andrew's betrayal even more pathetic. He hadn't even stolen our savings for love, just for greed and ego. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glowed with elegant lighting as Denver's financial elite gathered for Thompson Financial's annual charity gala. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm light over tables adorned with elaborate flower arrangements, while a string quartet played softly in the background. I arrived precisely at 7:45 p.m., wearing a fitted midnight blue gown that projected confident sophistication rather than seeking attention. Catherine was already present, engaged in conversation with several Hawthorne board members at our designated table. "Olivia," she greeted me warmly. Impeccable timing. "Jeffrey Thompson has been asking when you'd arrive." Jeffrey Thompson stood across the room, distinguished in his tuxedo, greeting guests alongside his wife. Andrew was nowhere in sight yet, though several Thompson executives, including Gerald Wilson, were clustered near the bar. "Has our special guest from Miami made an appearance?" I asked quietly. "Not yet," Catherine replied, "though I understand you've already had a preliminary meeting." I raised an eyebrow. "Your sources are impressive." "As are yours," she countered with a slight smile. "The Four Seasons concierge is particularly attentive to Hawthorne executives' activities. What's your assessment of Ms. Carson?" "Coldly pragmatic. She's already positioning to abandon Andrew and save herself. As expected, social climbers typically prioritize self-preservation over loyalty." Our conversation was interrupted by Jeffrey Thompson's approach. "Olivia, wonderful to see you." His greeting was effusive, betraying no sign of the concerns Andrew had supposedly raised. "And Catherine Blackwell, I'm delighted you could join us tonight." "The pleasure is mine," Catherine replied smoothly. "Thompson Financial's commitment to philanthropic leadership is admirable." "Speaking of leadership," Jeffrey said, turning to me, "I understand we should discuss Hawthorne's interest in deepening our firm's relationship, perhaps during dinner?" "I'd welcome that conversation," I agreed. "Catherine has some thoughts on how our organizations might evolve together." Jeffrey nodded, looking pleased. "Excellent. I've arranged our seating accordingly." He glanced toward the entrance. "Ah, here's Andrew now." I turned to see Andrew entering the ballroom, Vanessa Carson on his arm. She was stunning in a crimson gown that drew every eye in the room, exactly as intended, no doubt. Andrew guided her through the crowd with proprietary pride, nodding to colleagues and clients as they made their way toward us. "Jeffrey," Andrew greeted warmly, shaking his hand. "May I introduce Vanessa Carson, my business partner from Platinum Coast Properties. Vanessa, this is Jeffrey Thompson, founder of Thompson Financial." "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Thompson," Vanessa said, her voice carrying just the right note of respectful admiration. "Andrew speaks so highly of your vision for the firm." "Charmed," Jeffrey replied. "And you know Olivia, of course?" "We've met," I confirmed, maintaining professional composure. "Just this afternoon, in fact." A flash of alarm crossed Andrew's face. "You've met? When?" "Ms. Carson reached out to discuss some investment strategies," I replied smoothly. "Very informative conversation." Vanessa's smile remained unchanged, though her eyes conveyed a clear message. She was playing her own game now, independent of Andrew's failing strategy. "Indeed," she agreed. "I always believe in direct communication when navigating complex situations." Andrew's expression tightened as he processed this unexpected development. "Olivia, could I have a word privately?" "Actually, dinner is about to be served," Catherine interjected. "And Jeffrey has arranged specific seating to facilitate our discussions about Hawthorne and Thompson's future collaboration." "Collaboration?" Andrew repeated, confusion evident. Jeffrey clapped him on the shoulder. "Yes, exciting developments ahead. We'll discuss everything over dinner. Andrew, you and Ms. Carson are at table 3 with Gerald and some of our key clients." As we moved toward our tables, Andrew caught my arm. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "What collaboration is Jeffrey talking about?" "Business, Andrew," I replied calmly. "Something you should focus on rather than creating elaborate cover stories for fraud." His grip tightened. "You need to stop this now, Olivia. You have no idea what you're interfering with." "I know exactly what I'm interfering with," I corrected, extracting my arm from his grasp. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dinner meeting with your boss, and mine." Throughout dinner, I watched Andrew growing increasingly agitated as he observed Catherine, Jeffrey, and me engaged in animated conversation. Vanessa, meanwhile, charmed everyone at her table while periodically checking her phone, likely waiting for confirmation that her documentation had been received and reviewed. By dessert, Jeffrey had agreed in principle to Hawthorne's acquisition of his remaining shares in Thompson Financial. Franklin Taylor had produced preliminary documents, which Jeffrey reviewed approvingly. This ensures Thompson's legacy continues under proper stewardship, Jeffrey noted as he initialed each page, though I must ask about current management continuity through the transition. "We anticipate retaining key professionals who uphold Thompson's ethical standards," Catherine assured him, "while implementing targeted restructuring where necessary." "Restructuring?" Jeffrey inquired, "primarily addressing operational redundancies and compliance enhancements," I explained. "Gerald Wilson has already provided valuable insights on areas requiring attention." Jeffrey looked surprised. "Gerald has been consulting with Hawthorne?" "Informally," I clarified. "His institutional knowledge and commitment to client-focused practices align perfectly with our vision for Thompson's future." As Jeffrey signed the final page, Catherine gestured to a waiter who delivered champagne for our table. "To a successful partnership," she proposed, raising her glass. Across the room, I could see Andrew watching this toast with growing alarm. He excused himself from his table and approached ours with determined strides. "Jeffrey, we need to talk," he interrupted. "There are critical factors you should consider before proceeding with any Hawthorne arrangements." Jeffrey seemed taken aback by Andrew's abruptness. "Andrew, this isn't the appropriate moment." "It's exactly the appropriate moment," Andrew insisted. "Before you sign anything binding, there are serious concerns about Hawthorne's intentions toward Thompson." Catherine regarded him coolly. "Mr. Reynolds, perhaps you should direct any professional concerns through proper channels rather than interrupting a private conversation." "This is my firm's future at stake," Andrew retorted, "a future being manipulated through personal vendettas." Jeffrey frowned. "What are you talking about, Andrew?" Before Andrew could respond, Gerald Wilson approached our table. "I believe I can clarify the situation, Jeffrey. I've documented concerning patterns in certain client accounts that warrant immediate review by compliance." Andrew paled visibly. "Gerald, this isn't the venue for internal operational discussions." "On the contrary," Catherine interjected smoothly. "As Thompson Financial's new majority owner, Hawthorne Capital has a direct interest in any compliance concerns, particularly those involving client accounts." The words hit Andrew like a physical blow. "Majority owner? What are you talking about?" Jeffrey looked confused by Andrew's reaction. "Hawthorne has controlled Thompson through Evergreen Partners for over 2 years, Andrew. I assumed you were aware of our ownership structure." "Evergreen Partners is Hawthorne?" Andrew turned to me, comprehension finally dawning. "You've known this all along. It's public information for those who bother to research company structures," I replied evenly. Though admittedly, not everyone performs proper due diligence before making significant decisions. The double meaning wasn't lost on Andrew, whose face flushed with anger and humiliation. "This is manipulation, plain and simple. You're using your position at Hawthorne to orchestrate a professional hit job because of personal grievances." Catherine's expression hardened. "Mr. Reynolds, I suggest you moderate your tone and accusations. Hawthorne's interest in Thompson Financial predates any personal situations by years. and our acquisition strategy is based entirely on business fundamentals. Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately, Jeffrey suggested, clearly uncomfortable with the public confrontation. Excellent idea, Catherine agreed. Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Carson, would you join us in the private dining room? Gerald, you as well. Franklin, please bring the compliance documentation. As our group moved toward the private dining room, I noticed Vanessa discreetly checking her phone again. Whatever game she was playing, she appeared to be receiving the confirmation she sought. In the privacy of the wood-paneled dining room, Catherine took immediate control of the conversation. Let's address the central issues directly. Mr. Reynolds, Thompson Financial has been a Hawthorne subsidiary for over 2 years, operating under independent branding, but ultimately accountable to our governance standards. Andrew looked shell-shocked, his carefully constructed reality crumbling around him. This is absurd. I would have known if my own firm was owned by Hawthorne. Evidently not, Catherine replied. Just as you seemed unaware that redirecting clients to external investments for undisclosed referral fees constitutes a serious regulatory violation. Gerald placed a folder on the table. I've been tracking unusual patterns in over 20 client accounts under your management, Andrew. Significant liquidations followed by investment redirections to entities not approved through Thompson's compliance process. Jeffrey's expression darkened as he reviewed the documentation. Is this accurate, Andrew? These were specialized investment opportunities for qualified clients, Andrew insisted. Alternative asset allocations not requiring full compliance documentation. That's not accurate, Gerald countered. Any investment recommendation from a Thompson advisor requires full disclosure, documentation, and compliance approval, regardless of the asset class or client qualification. Ms. Carson? Catherine turned to Vanessa, who had remained strategically silent. As Mr. Reynolds' business partner, perhaps you could clarify the nature of these investment opportunities? Vanessa hesitated, glancing between Andrew and me, before making her calculated decision. I believe there may have been some compliance oversights in our partnership structure. As I mentioned to Olivia this afternoon, I've already provided full documentation of all transactions to appropriate Hawthorne representatives. Andrew stared at her in disbelief. You did what? Business decisions require adaptability, Andrew, Vanessa replied coolly. When situations change, strategies must adjust accordingly. The betrayal left Andrew momentarily speechless, his confident facade completely shattered. Catherine turned to Jeffrey. As Thompson's new full owner, Hawthorne has both the right and responsibility to address these compliance issues immediately. We'll need to implement a management transition plan, client protection protocols, and appropriate regulatory disclosures. I understand, Jeffrey agreed solemnly. I had no idea these activities were occurring. Of course not, Catherine assured him. Your reputation for integrity is precisely why we valued this acquisition. Andrew finally found his voice again. This is orchestrated corporate theft disguised as compliance concerns. Olivia is using her position at Hawthorne to retaliate because she discovered I was developing an independent investment venture. Is that what you call stealing nearly $1 million from your joint savings to fund a luxury condo for Ms. Carson? Franklin Taylor asked mildly. An independent investment venture? Or receiving undisclosed referral fees for directing Thompson clients to Platinum Coast properties? Gerald added. Andrew turned to me, desperation replacing his earlier confidence. Olivia, you can't do this. 15 years of marriage has to count for something. It counted for everything, I replied quietly. Until you decided our life savings. And wedding vows were disposable assets in your pursuit of whatever this is. I gestured between him and Vanessa. Catherine cleared her throat. As fascinating as these personal elements may be, our focus must remain on Thompson Financial's future and client protection. Mr. Reynolds, effective immediately, your access to all Thompson systems, client accounts, and facilities is suspended pending full investigation. You can't do that, Andrew protested. I'm a partner in the firm. A minority partner in a subsidiary now wholly owned by Hawthorne, Franklin corrected. Your partnership agreement includes standard clauses regarding ethical violations and regulatory compliance. And Ms. Carson's documentation provides comprehensive evidence of both, Catherine added. Andrew turned to Vanessa in disbelief. You're helping them destroy me? After everything we've built together? I'm protecting my own interests, Vanessa replied unapologetically. Something you should have considered before creating such obvious exposure for both of us. As Andrew struggled to process this complete collapse of his position, I maintained my professional composure while experiencing a profound sense of clarity. The man I had married, whose financial judgment I had trusted implicitly, had been revealed as something entirely different. A small man with delusions of grandeur, willing to betray any loyalty for his own advancement. Olivia will oversee Thompson's restructuring as part of her role at Hawthorne, Catherine informed Jeffrey. Her expertise in strategic reorganization makes her uniquely qualified to implement the necessary changes while preserving Thompson's core strengths. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Andrew had stolen our savings to fund a relationship with Vanessa, only to end up effectively fired by his wife from a company he hadn't even realized she controlled. 3 months later, I stood in my new corner office at Thompson Financial, now officially rebranded as Thompson Hawthorne Advisors. The restructuring had been completed efficiently, with Gerald Wilson promoted to Chief Operations Officer and several of Andrew's allies quietly removed from the organization. The regulatory investigation had been contained through proactive self-reporting and client restitution, while most of the misappropriated funds had been recovered through legal proceedings against both Andrew and Vanessa. Andrew himself had attempted to fight his termination, filing lawsuits that were quickly dismissed when faced with the overwhelming evidence of his misconduct. Last I'd heard, he was interviewing for mid-level positions at smaller firms in Texas, his professional reputation permanently tarnished by the regulatory disclosures. Vanessa had fared somewhat better, leveraging her cooperation into a reduced financial settlement, though she'd been forced to surrender the Azure condo and relocate to a more modest Miami apartment. Her carefully cultivated image as a luxury real estate specialist had been replaced by a new narrative as a financial industry consultant. As for me, the divorce had been finalized with surprising efficiency, given Andrew's weakened position and the clear evidence of financial misconduct. I had recovered most of our joint savings, though the emotional investment of 15 years remained permanently lost. But as I looked out over Denver's skyline from my new office, I felt neither bitterness nor regret, only a calm certainty that sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to unexpected clarity and strength. Andrew had spent our life savings on his mistress, never imagining he would end up working for me. The irony wasn't lost on me that in attempting to build a secret life beyond my knowledge, he had failed to understand the one he shared with me. In underestimating my capabilities, he had engineered his own downfall more thoroughly than I ever could have orchestrated alone. Sometimes justice arrives in unexpected forms, delivered not through vengeance, but through the natural consequences of one's own actions. Andrew had spent our savings on his mistress, never knowing I owned his company, a truth that ultimately cost him everything he had tried to steal from me. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.